Now available in paperback and Kindle, All About Marilyn. Learn all about the struggles of a faded former teen sitcom star in this absolutely fabulous 5-star screenplay. Get All About Marilyn in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com today.
Hollywood Historical Women in Crisis.
One of my viewers wanted me to do another installment in the Hollywood Historical Women in Crisis series. And for this installment in the Hollywood Historical Women in Crisis series, I'm going to be talking about Academy Award-winning actress Katherine Hepburn. All images used in this video are under fair use of United States copyright law of 1976 and are used in conjunction with my commentary. Now, Katherine Hepburn is one of the most celebrated actresses of the 20th century, winning 4 Academy Awards over the course of her decades-long career, and also going out here and starring in multiple signature movies such as The Philadelphia Story and movies like The African Queen and On Golden Pond. So Katherine Hepburn had a very storied career in Hollywood for, I say, over about 70 years, but sadly, over that whole storied career, she was a woman in crisis all throughout that career. And Katherine Hepburn basically was put on the road to becoming a woman in crisis from the day she was born to her parents, Thomas Norval Hepburn, a wealthy man, and Catherine Martha Houghton Hepburn, a feminist campaigner. And because her mother was a feminist from the day she was born, Katherine Hepburn basically was taught the culture of feminism and indoctrinated into the culture of feminism ever since the day she was born. And because her mother was one of these feminists who basically was associated with women like Margaret Sanger, this basically put Katherine Hepburn on the road to becoming a feminist indoctrinated woman whose life would be one where she would wind up in crisis when she got older. Now, Katherine Hepburn basically was raised, again, by a feminist indoctrinated mother who wanted to go out here and raise her daughter to become a progressive feminist like her, believing in concepts like men and women being equal. And this basically impacted Katherine Hepburn when she was younger, because she became a tomboy who called herself Jimmy and cut her hair short and was looking to go out here and compete with men, because her father encouraged her to go out here and push her mind and body to the limit, to the point where she wanted to go out here and look to compete with guys. And again, competing with guys because she thought she was equal to a man. This was laying the foundation for her becoming a woman in crisis, and she suffered a great tragedy later on around 1921 when 13-year-old Katherine Hepburn and her brother Tom were visiting New York, staying with a friend, and then Katherine Hepburn discovered the body of her older brother dead from a suicide. And when she saw her brother dead with a curtain tied around a beam where he hanged himself, the Hepburn family denied that it was suicide and tried to say that Tom's death was an experiment gone wrong. And this denial basically traumatized Katherine Hepburn and made it where she could not trust her so-called progressive parents, who oftentimes talked about expressing herself and being open as related to expressing opinions. Her whole family basically betrayed those ideals that they instilled in their daughter by going out here and looking to make the death of her brother Tom a secret, and not wanting to go out here and speak the truth about what happened. And they didn't want to speak the truth about what happened because it was basically the Hepburn family had turned Tom into one of these beta males like his father, and he had become a man in crisis. And this man in crisis basically wound up taking his life. And as he took his life, Katherine didn't know why he did it, but it possibly had to do with issues as related to his progressive family, not looking to go out here and meet his emotional needs or teach him what he needed to survive in the world. And this whole incident as related to Katherine Hepburn and her family lying about the death of her brother Tom, again, this made Katherine Hepburn really just, it scarred her because you're supposed to be able to trust your parents and trust everything that they say. But these progressive parents basically showed that they were just hypocrites as related to what they preached, because they weren't practicing it as related to someone she truly loved. And this is what led to Katherine Hepburn becoming very moody and suspicious of people, staying away from people, dropping out of school, and looking to be tutored privately, because she felt that since her parents just could not be people that could be trusted, she couldn't trust other people, because when your first teacher is the ones going out here hiding stuff and going contradictory to what they say they believe in, that makes it where you don't really trust anything anyone says. And that's what happened to Katherine Hepburn. That made her withdraw, because she felt like, oh, if I can't trust my parents, I can't trust anyone. And this basically scarred Katherine Hepburn to the point, because she possibly loved her brother Tom, because usually younger sisters love older brothers and look up to them. And she loved this brother so much that she basically took his birth date as her own. And again, this basically showed how she had issues as related to becoming a woman in crisis, because this trauma basically scarred her overall. And she then went to college to Bryn Mawr College, a women's college that I believe is rooted in feminism, to satisfy her mother, who studied at that same college. But she was self-conscious and was uncomfortable with her classmates, and then decided to go and just go into acting. And then when she went into acting, things started to improve for her at school. And as things improved for her at school, she graduated with a degree in philosophy, and then went on to pursue a career as an actress. And as Katherine Hepburn pursued a career as an actress, she broke into theater, and then went from theater into Hollywood. And then as she went into Hollywood, she was building up her career through the 1930s, up until she had some setbacks where she was considered to be box office poison. But then Katherine Hepburn was able to bounce back, and as she bounced back, she started working on many of her signature films, such as The Philadelphia Story. She did other movies, and again starred with many of the great actors of the time, like James Stewart and Spencer Tracy, and many actors out here, and still managed to have a long storied career. And again, that long storied career was filled with movies like The Philadelphia Story, films like Pat and Mike, As You Like It, The African Queen, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And again, Katherine Hepburn got a lot of critical acclaim for her great performances in film, television, and theater. Unfortunately, she still had issues as related to her personal and social life, and she had those issues as related to her personal and social life due to the feminist indoctrination she got. And because of the feminist indoctrination she got, she basically did not know how to socialize with people, and again, distanced herself from people overall, and didn't really want to go out here and do much socializing. And sadly, this actually had an effect on her as related to her personal relationships. Her only marriage was to Ludlow Ogden Smith, and he was a socialite businessman from Philadelphia, but the relationship basically fell apart because she basically had no real personal connection with him, and she couldn't really connect with him. And again, this was a really big problem, because he wanted to have a relationship with her, but she couldn't have a relationship with him due to the feminist indoctrination, because due to feminist indoctrinated women, they don't want to submit to the authority and leadership of a man. And because feminist indoctrinated women don't want to submit to men, it makes it hard for them to have relationships with men. And oftentimes, both partners are unfulfilled, and they're unfulfilled because the woman won't go out here and submit to the man under God's order, and that prevents her from being able to form a mental, spiritual, or emotional connection. And mostly it's the spiritual and emotional that never get fulfilled from that woman, and that prevents that woman from being able to bond with that man. And again, Katherine Hepburn did manage to maintain an amicable friendship with her husband, but it could never grow into anything closer, because with most feminist indoctrinated women, there's an emotional wall that is between them and their partners, and that emotional wall between them and their partners really prevents them from going out here and bonding with a man, because they have a lot of fear as related to connecting with a man. And again, Katherine Hepburn possibly had a lot of fear as related to connecting with a man due to the trauma she endured as related to seeing her parents basically betray her brother and seeing her brother basically kill himself. So one of the first men that she was close to basically ended his life, and that possibly led to her having a hard time connecting with other men. In addition to the feminist indoctrination, seeing one of the first men she considered to be a peer that she admired, because again, older brothers are admired by their younger sisters and seen as a authority and a leader. And when they see the first man in their life, or the first male figure in their life, die like that, again, it's very traumatizing, and it makes it where people are averse to connecting with someone. So yes, Katherine Hepburn got married, but the marriage wound up falling apart. And it wound up falling apart around 1934. And after the marriage fell apart, she went out here and got involved with her agent, Leland Hayward, even though he was married. And I believe this was something that was deliberately done, because Katherine Hepburn basically was afraid of committing to a man. And because she was afraid of committing to a man, she got involved with men who were married, or men who were already connected to other people. And that's why she possibly got involved with this agent. And she possibly got involved with this agent because, again, he was a male figure who was already attached to someone, so that meant he couldn't connect with her. And she said that while the guy wanted to divorce and marry her, she said she liked the idea of being her own single self. But I believe that she was scared of committing to another man out of the fear that if she got involved with a man and submitted and trusted him, what would happen is that man would be taken away from her, like her brother was. And that fear, again, I believe led to her getting involved with another guy, Howard Hughes, who she got involved with after being introduced by Cary Grant. Now, Howard Hughes wanted to marry Katherine Hepburn, but Hepburn stayed focusing on her career, like many feminist women do. And again, her staying focused on her career was all about the fear of submitting to a man. Howard Hughes was one of the world's richest men, but Katherine Hepburn didn't want to commit to one of the world's richest men, again, because she feared submitting to his male authority. She feared submitting to the order of this man, and she wanted to maintain her own power and independence, and this is why she basically wanted to stay focused on her career, because she was afraid of committing to Howard Hughes. And again, this wasn't about money, this was about emotional insecurity, because Katherine Hepburn was basically emotionally insecure, and she was emotionally insecure due to the feminist indoctrination of her mother and the trauma of seeing her brother pass away through a suicide. So this is basically what led to her not wanting to go out here and get married to a man or even want to have children. She said it was a full-time commitment, and I guess she was afraid of committing to children because she feared that possibly they would wind up dying like her brother before her time. And again, this basically was one of the reasons why Katherine Hepburn had multiple issues as related to committing, and basically sat to be the side piece of her former agent and then be the side piece of Spencer Tracy. Now, Spencer Tracy was already a man in crisis because of the trauma he endured from the betrayal of his wife, who did not tell him that his son was deaf. And because his wife didn't tell him his son was deaf, he was devastated that his wife didn't trust him with that information, and this led to him distancing himself from his then wife. And as he separated from his wife, he then got involved with Katherine Hepburn, and it looks like to me a man in crisis and a woman in crisis came together. And as a man in crisis and a woman in crisis came together, that was the thing that brought them both together. And again, originally Spencer Tracy thought that Katherine Hepburn was out of the alphabet community, but then she said that she was attracted to him, and while they both remained married to their partners, they both had this affair with each other. And again, this affair with each other as Spencer Tracy's side piece, Katherine Hepburn was out here with him, and they were a couple. And the media basically covered up the whole thing as related to their previous marriages. And as they covered up their previous marriages, they spun the story to make them look like a power couple. And they made them look like a power couple, and both of them, again, were men and women in crisis who came together. Spencer Tracy was an alcoholic struggling, again, with the traumas as related to his son being deaf and his rough upbringing, and Katherine Hepburn wanted to be the helpmeet to this man. Again, it was another relationship that benefited her because she didn't have to commit and submit to this man emotionally. She could go out here and be a part of his life mentally as related to the relationship and personally to the relationship, but she didn't have to be in a relationship with him and have an emotional bond because she could feel like, okay, he's got a wife and I don't have to commit to him. And it's like they were together for some time. And again, they were together as Spencer Tracy's health started to deteriorate in the 1960s. And Katherine Hepburn went out here and started to take a 5-year break to take care of him. She moved into his house and then was with him when he died in 1967 and was even a part of his last film, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Now, out of the whole thing is Katherine Hepburn basically loved Spencer Tracy, but she never really formed a complete bond with him. And again, that was all because he was the perfect man for her at the time, a man in crisis who allowed her to be a helpmeet to her because she was trying to help him through a crisis, but she didn't have to really fully commit to him the way she would have to do for a husband. And again, that's all part of the ish traumas as related to feminist indoctrination, because a feminist, she wants to go out here and have relationships with men, but she doesn't want to submit fully to a man. And again, Katherine Hepburn basically was a woman in crisis, involved with a man in crisis, and when he died, she was with him, but she did not attend his funeral. And it was only after Spencer Tracy's wife's death that she talked about how she really felt about Spencer Tracy. And again, it was really sad because both of them could have basically had each other and fully committed to each other. But the whole thing is that she couldn't really commit to him the way she really wanted to because she was afraid of if she formed a connection and a bond with him, she would lose him. And again, this is one of the things that feminist indoctrinated women wind up dealing with, and it winds up leading to them having really half of a relationship and not a full one. And that's basically what happened with Katherine Hepburn, who later on, after the passing of Spencer Tracy, just decided to just go on by herself. And as she went on by herself, she basically was very weak around 1997 and had been dealing and wasn't able to do much because she wasn't able to speak or eat very little. She had signs of dementia in her later years, and she was a very private person. And around 2003, sadly, Katherine Hepburn wound up passing away at her family home in Connecticut. And after she passed away, she wound up being buried in a private ceremony. But sadly, even in spite of all of Katherine Hepburn's great success, she was struggling with life, and she was a woman in crisis. And she was a woman in crisis who was indoctrinated into feminism and showed the sad paradigm of a feminist indoctrinated woman, where you have this life where you have this great career, but you have you struggle as related to your personal life, similar to Christine Chubbuck and other women I've talked about in the Historical Women in Crisis series. Many of these women, yes, they can compete with men in the business circles, but their personal life is in shambles, and it's in shambles because they really don't know how to be a woman who can socialize as a helpmeet and a support to a man. And that was shown because Katherine Hepburn basically dealt with men in crisis because she's still dealing with trauma from her brother, who was a man in crisis due to the dysfunctional way he was raised. So when I look at Katherine Hepburn, again, she was a celebrated woman and a celebrated star, but she was still a woman in crisis. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to women winding up on the road to becoming women in crisis, you can pick up my book, The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Woman Crisis at other online booksellers like Smashware's The iBookstore and Google Play. And if you want to see me do another installment in the Hollywood Historical Women in Crisis series, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App. And if I know something about that woman, I will make that video for you. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today.